This is the To Health With That Naturally Healthy in No Time podcast for big health topics taken in small bites. I'm your host, naturopathic Dr. Amy Newsel, and this is Season 1, all about the MTHFR mutation. This week, I want to talk about what you can expect when you're actually working on breaking a mental bad habit. So last week, we started this conversation about the bad habit component, called neuroplasticity, of depression or anxiety or intrusive thoughts or obsessive-compulsive thoughts. This is, of course, only part of the picture. Neurotransmitter balance is a factor along with the often overlooked physical contributors to depression and other states. And that does include your methylation and the health of your methylation cycle. So last week we talked about 3 main methods for breaking mental bad habits. Those are the fantasy, the stop and drop, and the distraction. And when you're first trying this, it can be really helpful to try all 3 strategies at different times just to see what actually works the best for you. And you'll know it works when you're able to pop yourself out of your mental, whatever it is, that thought loop or that feeling, even if it's a feeling in your body, right? If you're using this tool effectively, you can actually kind of lift yourself out of that. Success is feeling different in your body and letting go of whatever that thought pattern is that signifies your mental bad habit, right? So if it's catastrophizing, then you're kind of letting go of the catastrophe. You're thinking about something else, right? It could be dishes. It could be totally mundane. It might be, useful or useless. But success is not doing the thing that we're working on not doing. So when you're starting this, it kind of goes through stages. And the first stage is learning, right? In this phase, you're actually learning to pay attention to your thoughts, and that takes way more time than you might think. So you may find a particular warning signal for you. It could be a behavior, like when I'm starting to feel this way, I always log on to Facebook and click links that make me angry, or I start craving XYZ food, or I start having a physical feeling, a headache in a particular place, a clenching in my belly, a pain in my neck or shoulders. It could also be something more subtle, right? Like tuning into your mood more frequently, or that sudden energy drop that you sometimes experience for unknown reasons. And so in this phase, you're kind of learning what your body triggers are and also learning to pay attention to them, right? Learning to be mindful of them because a lot of times we aren't, right? It's really easy to realize that you're anxious when you've been clenching your jaw for the last 3 hours and you suddenly notice that you've got like an ache. But it's a lot harder when you first start clenching your jaw. Or when you first get into the piano is going to fall out of the sky thought loop. And again, in this phase, it might also be a trigger thought, right? Like, here's my old friend, the thought about, I'm not good enough, or somebody else is doing better, or I should be doing better, or whatever, right? Like, whatever it is, it doesn't really matter. But recognizing that thought is this first phase. What we're learning to do is actually utilize those signals. The second phase, I like to call it out of control. And that's not a very encouraging name, but this phase actually feels like you're moving backwards. You've started tuning in, and now you're actually noticing how much your brain does this thing. And it's a ton. I can guarantee you it's way more than you think you do this thing. It will seem like your brain is like a wild horse and it's racing ahead of you and it feels like the bad habit is happening way more, not less, right? Like it does not feel like you're in control at this moment. This is actually great news. It's a great sign because the reality is that you aren't doing the bad thing more. You're just noticing how much you do it. You're noticing more. And that's the first step to actually changing it. It can take a while, right? This could be a few months even of diligent attention, but don't get discouraged. You're doing it and you're making progress. The next phase I like to call quietening. And in this phase, you start to make noticeable progress. The mental bad habit is becoming a little bit softer, maybe a little bit quieter. The thoughts or feelings are still there and they still pop up and they still affect you, but you're actually learning to pop yourself out of them more quickly. And it's easier not to get sucked in, right? And to believe what your mind is telling you or to follow along that train of thought. And then the last phase I like to call maintenance. And this phase is kind of amazing. One day, you'll notice that your mental bad habit pops up, and the first thought you'll have is, oh, I haven't seen that for a while. And you'll dismiss it, and you'll move on. This is actually where you've got the freedom to move on to doing something else, because that bad habit is mostly gone. It's a good idea to still take proactive action when it pops up, right? Like still use whatever tool you're using, whatever remedy. But it pops up so much less frequently that it becomes almost like a curiosity when it's there. Like, oh, look at that. I haven't seen that in a while. Why? Why is it doing it right now? You know? Great. So I'll be mentally healthy by next week, right? No, absolutely not. Sorry. I would love to say it was that easy and it took, like very minimal time or effort, but that would be a bald-faced lie. This is a challenge, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of work because you have invested so much energy already into building those good, strong neural pathways about whatever your mental bad habit is, that you've kind of got to invest the same amount of energy to unbuild them, right? Like this is deconstruction at work. That takes time. Right? There's no shortcut. There is no shortcut. But it's one of those things where when you feel helpless, you actually have something you can do that's proactive, right? Because I think a lot of us get to a point where we feel helpless when we're confronted with our minds. We feel like it isn't in our control. It isn't something that we can do anything about. So it could be months, could be maybe even a year. This isn't quick. But that doesn't mean it's not worth it. It's so worth it. And it's just those small efforts repeated again and again and again. And does this work every time? Yeah, actually it does. If you stick with it, it does. As long as, and here's the caveat, as long as there isn't some major imbalance that we're overlooking. If your anxiety is actually related to, say, a blood sugar crash, without fixing the blood sugar crash, that's not going to go away. You can pay more attention to it, and you can start to notice the factors around it, but you have to actually fix the blood sugar crash. There's also situations where, if your neurotransmitters are actually so low that they're in kind of the sub-basement of your life, this will still help to fix the habit part, but it won't necessarily completely normalize the serotonin, but it will actually bring it up. Research shows that these techniques are associated with higher levels of both serotonin and melatonin. So what is this witchcraft, you might ask? Well, actually, it's mindfulness. I don't love the word mindfulness. It's become kind of a catchphrase, and I think when something becomes this like pop culture catchphrase, I'm practicing mindfulness, I'm doing mindfulness, blah, blah. It starts to lose meaning, right? It starts to lose value because it's just so the thing to do and the trendy thing that everybody says they're doing it, but nobody's actually doing it. Mindfulness is actually an incredibly valuable tool, and we're now growing the body of research that supports that. So among the many documented effects of mindfulness are increased well-being, we all want that, reduced cognitive reactivity, so that means external factors in your life don't affect your mental landscape as much, reduced inflammation, we all want that, reduced reactivity of the autonomic nervous system, so this means like every time something bad happens, you don't get that huge adrenaline spike hormonal response. Higher serotonin, as I mentioned before. Higher melatonin, that's better sleep. Yeah, yes, please. And increased telomerase activity. Your telomeres are all about anti-aging, right? Like this is cellular aging at its finest. And I would like some of that too. I would like some anti-aging. This is such a valuable thing that you can do, and you can do it anywhere. You can do these things while you're in your car, while you're at your office, while you're in bed. This can happen anywhere. You don't have to take special time out of your life. You can do this all the time. Repeat it. It takes a few seconds. Even if you can devote 10 seconds 3 times a day to this, you're doing it. Just keep doing it. So thank you for listening today. I have got some amazing things coming up that have to do with an MTHFR community. And I know I've mentioned it, but it's actually going to be born in April. And I would love for you to join me there. So sign up on the mailing list at tohealthwiththat.com for all of the details. Or you can always shoot me an email. If you know you want to be a part of this, shoot me an email. Amy, AMY, at tohealthwiththat.com. See you there.